Like, there's a lone wolf part of me that maybe you can relate to, but I like being by myself.
A rivalry born in rage. A friendship buried under decades of silence. And now, an unexpected confession. James Hetfield has just opened a door fans never thought he'd touch again. His complicated, emotional history with Dave Mustaine and his band Megadeth. We all know the headlines: fights, firings, and decades of bitterness. But what really happened behind the guitars, the fame, and the music? Why now? Why speak up at 61? And what does Hetfield truly think about the man who helped build Metallica, only to become its fiercest rival? We dug through interviews, confessions, and missed chances to unpack this long-running feud, one that changed the course of heavy metal forever. In 1981, fate collided with ambition when four young musicians crossed paths, unaware they were about to redefine the very essence of metal. James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich, two hungry kids from California, had just begun forming the foundation of what would become Metallica. But something was missing, until Dave Mustaine entered the picture. A storm in human form, Mustaine wasn't just another guitarist. He was raw talent fused with unchecked aggression. From day one, his influence on Metallica was undeniable. His jagged emotional guitar work brought menace and chaos to early songs like The Four Horsemen and Jump in the Fire. Many fans don't realize how deeply his fingerprints were embedded in early Metallica. Without Dave's relentless energy, those early tracks might have lacked the searing edge that helped ignite the thrash metal movement. But genius often comes at a cost. Mustaine's brilliance was inseparable from his volatility. His drinking spiraled. Fights erupted. Rehearsals broke down in chaos. The band admired his talent but feared his temper. It was like creating music in a pressure cooker. One infamous moment summed it up. Mustaine's dog damaged bassist Ron McGovney's car, leading Hetfield to confront him. A drunken Mustaine retaliated with violence, throwing a punch that may have sealed his fate. This wasn't just about a dog, it was about trust, control, and a band on the brink. Behind the scenes, Hetfield and Ulrich faced a gut-wrenching decision. They needed Mustaine's fire, but they feared it would consume everything. And so, just days before recording their debut album Kill 'Em All, they made the call. No discussion, no warning, they fired him. They put Mustaine on a Greyhound bus back to Los Angeles with nothing but his gear and a cold goodbye. The impact was devastating. "It was the biggest betrayal of my life," Mustaine later said. "I helped start that band. I poured everything into it. And they tossed me out like garbage." The pain didn't fade, it festered, fueling a decades-long rivalry that shaped both men's careers. Hetfield later admitted the guilt. "We were all wild back then," he said. "But Dave took it further than we could handle. We did what we had to do, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt." For Hetfield, it wasn't just a band decision, it was losing a brother. And yet, Mustaine didn't vanish. He transformed. Out of the ashes, he built Megadeth, not just to succeed, but to eclipse Metallica. Every riff, every lyric was a declaration of war. Metallica had silenced him, but instead, they created their fiercest challenger. The fire they lit didn't just burn bridges, it ignited something far more powerful. Mustaine wasn't walking away defeated, he was preparing for a war of his own. Mustaine didn't walk away, he was exiled, bruised in ego and spirit. And as the bus rolled toward Los Angeles in 1983, he wasn't just staring out the window, he was planning revenge. In those long hours of isolation, a new mission took shape, to build a band so powerful it would haunt the people who'd thrown him out. That mission became Megadeth. This wasn't born from peace, it was forged in rage. Everything Mustaine felt, betrayal, humiliation, anger, was channeled into his songwriting. Within 2 years, that fury erupted in Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good, released in 1985. It wasn't a debut, it was a threat. Especially the track Mechanics, a reworked, accelerated version of Metallica's The Four Horsemen, which Mustaine had co-written. By claiming it as his own, he sent a clear message: this was mine all along. But Mustaine wasn't just shouting at Metallica, he was reshaping metal itself. While Metallica began broadening their sound for mass appeal, Megadeth doubled down on complexity. Intricate guitar work, whiplash tempos, snarling vocals. Mustaine wasn't trying to match Metallica, he wanted to surpass them in every way. Not just to be compared. He wanted to be crowned. The divide grew quickly. Metallica's Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets earned them mainstream respect for their melodic evolution and structure. Megadeth, meanwhile, remained deep in the trenches of pure, unrelenting thrash. Fans picked sides: Metallica, the band that matured, or Megadeth, the band that refused to compromise. Mustaine only fueled the fire in interviews, calling Metallica sellouts, mocking their lyrics, accusing them of riding fame's coattails. His fans, many musicians themselves, embraced his bitterness. He was the wounded anti-hero who came back swinging, and that edge became a defining part of Megadeth's sound. Behind the scenes, Hetfield and Ulrich paid attention. They heard the albums, saw the headlines, felt the venom. "We knew Dave was out there," Hetfield later admitted. "And yeah, it made us work harder." While Mustaine externalized his pain, Hetfield internalized his. Instead of confrontation, he sought elevation, making Metallica so great that no feud could touch them. Still, the shadow lingered. No matter how many records Metallica sold, how massive their tours grew, Mustaine remained, snarling in interviews, pushing technical limits, reminding the world he was part of the origin story. For many, that raw aggression made Megadeth feel more real. By the late 1980s, Megadeth was no longer just Mustaine's revenge project. It was a powerhouse in its own right. Albums like Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? And So Far, So Good, So What? Were not only commercial hits but artistic statements. Mustaine had transformed from the exiled guitarist into a visionary frontman. But success didn't bring peace. If anything, it deepened the wound. Because no matter how high Megadeth climbed, the world still compared him to Metallica. And that comparison, fair or not, kept the fire alive. After Dave Mustaine's dramatic departure from Metallica, many expected a fiery response from James Hetfield. But instead of lashing out or engaging in a public feud, Hetfield answered with something quieter, something more enduring. He didn't offer interviews filled with jabs or retaliatory insults. His answer was transformation. While Mustaine screamed his pain into every riff and interview, Hetfield remained mostly silent. But behind his calm exterior was a man who worked harder, wrote deeper, and funneled his unspoken rivalry into Metallica's ascent. In that silence, Hetfield found not just power, but purpose. Mustaine had once been a dominant force in Metallica's early days. His exit left a void, but it also gave Hetfield space to rise, not just as a frontman, but as the emotional and creative engine of the band. With Kirk Hammett stepping in as lead guitarist, Hetfield bore the weight of guilt, the drive to prove Metallica hadn't made a mistake, and the hunger to surpass what they had lost. The band's next move was crucial, and Ride the Lightning, released in 1984, marked a dramatic evolution. The riffs grew sharper, the compositions more sophisticated, and the lyrics darker. Hetfield's songwriting matured, digging into themes of existential dread and societal collapse. Metallica wasn't reacting to Mustaine, they were outrunning him. Still, Hetfield was not immune to the rivalry. In later interviews, he admitted, "We knew Dave was always watching. And in a weird way that pushed us. We didn't want to fall behind. We couldn't. This wasn't about keeping pace, it was about pulling ahead." Then came Master of Puppets in 1986, a masterstroke that solidified Metallica's dominance. With iconic tracks like Battery, Welcome Home, Sanitarium, and the title track, the album combined brutal power with intricate depth. It was Hetfield's magnum opus, proof that Metallica wasn't just surviving without Mustaine, they were thriving. Yet, comparisons remained. Fans debated solos, credits, and influences, constantly bringing up Mustaine's name in forums and articles. Mustaine fed the fire with public barbs, but Hetfield stayed silent, letting the music speak instead. Yet inside, Hetfield was never entirely at peace. He admitted that Mustaine's constant public bitterness wore on him. "It's hard when someone won't let go of the past, especially when you're trying to move forward." His words revealed a buried truth. Hetfield hadn't let go either. He had buried the past, but it was buried alive. As the 80s rolled into the 90s, Metallica expanded their sound. They embraced melody, wrote ballads like Fade to Black and Nothing Else Matters, angering purists but gaining a massive global audience. Albums like And Justice for All and the Black Album weren't just commercial hits, they were genre-defining landmarks. Some fans called it selling out. Mustaine certainly did. But Hetfield wasn't chasing trends, he was chasing immortality. He didn't just want to be better than Mustaine. He wanted Metallica to be untouchable. Behind the scenes, Hetfield battled demons far greater than musical rivalries. Addiction, fame, and deep self-doubt haunted him. He rarely expressed it outwardly, but it surfaced in songs like The God That Failed and The Unforgiven, each chord soaked in unresolved pain. That pain, some of it born from the Metallica-Megadeth fracture, became fuel, not for feud, but for legacy. His refusal to engage Mustaine wasn't weakness, it was focus. Hetfield was too busy crafting albums, breaking records, and carving out a place in history. For years, he said nothing. But his silence said everything. Then came the confrontation that would change everything. By the early 2000s, both Metallica and Megadeth had become legendary, their influence undeniable. Yet beneath all the accolades, one wound remained festering, the unresolved trauma of Mustaine's firing. That wound finally bled in 2004's documentary Some Kind of Monster. While documenting the band's chaos during the St. Anger sessions, the cameras captured an unexpected, emotional meeting between Hetfield and Mustaine, face-to-face, alone, for the first time since 1983. The footage is unforgettable. The once defiant Mustaine appeared raw and vulnerable, stripped of bravado. He looked Hetfield in the eye and said, "You never even said thank you. It's like you just threw me away." There was no performance, just decades of pain. Hetfield, clearly uncomfortable, listened. He didn't get defensive. He didn't offer excuses. He simply said, "At the time, we were just trying to survive." He spoke of chaos, addiction, and the volatility of the early days, not to justify, but to explain. What emerged from Hetfield wasn't rationalization, it was remorse. This was not a neatly packaged reconciliation. It was messy, painful, and real. For Mustaine, it was about respect and recognition. For Hetfield, it was about guilt and regret, about a decision made in youthful desperation that had haunted him in silence. The conversation didn't resolve anything, but it broke a barrier. For the first time, fans didn't see two rival legends. They saw two damaged men, tangled in a history too complicated for headlines. Mustaine admitted that despite Megadeth's success, Metallica's shadow always followed him. And Hetfield, too, seemed burdened by what might have been. Critics hailed the scene as one of the most raw and revealing moments in rock history. It wasn't about who was better, it was about being human. And it hinted at the faintest possibility that the wound could, maybe one day, heal. But true healing doesn't come from a single conversation. In the months that followed, Mustaine acknowledged the meeting meant something, but also that it hadn't erased the deeper scars. He still felt sidelined, unrecognized. Hetfield, while speaking positively about the talk, didn't pursue further dialogue. The emotional weight was simply too much. Still, something shifted. After Some Kind of Monster, Hetfield began referencing Mustaine more openly, not with venom, but with respect. And Mustaine, though still critical at times, also began speaking of Hetfield with more nuance. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was evolution. For the fans, the moment captured in Some Kind of Monster became iconic. It was proof that behind every great band are fractures, regrets, and unfinished conversations. The feud between James Hetfield and Dave Mustaine was never just about metal. It was about identity, betrayal, and a brotherhood lost. And for once, the music paused long enough to let the pain speak. Hetfield and Mustaine didn't resolve their past that day, but they exposed it. And that alone was monumental. Because the silence that had fueled the rivalry for so long had finally broken. From that fracture, a new kind of honesty emerged, one that would reshape how we saw them both. The words exchanged were raw, the wound still fresh, but behind the pain, something unexpected had begun to shift. After that emotional breakthrough, fans hoped it was the beginning of a long-overdue healing process. For decades, the Hetfield-Mustaine feud had been mythologized, reignited through interviews, albums, and headlines. But now, with the emotional walls starting to come down, a new and tantalizing question began to surface. Not from rumors or wishful thinking, but from Mustaine himself. What if they actually worked together again? The idea had once seemed unthinkable. Yet in the quiet aftermath of their emotional exchange, the notion of collaboration began to take root. At first, Mustaine's comments in interviews between 2020 and 2023 sounded like offhand wishes. Then, Gradually, they became more serious. According to Mustaine, behind the scenes he and Hetfield began real conversations about revisiting early Metallica material, songs they had written together in the chaotic pre-split days. For longtime fans, it would have been a historic event. Not just a reunion, but a restoration. The two men, side by side again, not as bitter rivals, but as the original architects of thrash metal. It wasn't just nostalgia they promised. It was redemption. But what began as a flicker of hope was extinguished just as quickly. In a 2023 interview with Guitar.com, Mustaine revealed why the project died. He said things were moving forward. The communication was open, and, for once, the bitterness was under control. Until one subject derailed everything: publishing rights. Mustaine had long believed he wasn't properly credited for his early contributions to Metallica's catalog. This time, he didn't vent in an interview. He brought it directly to Hetfield. According to Mustaine, that's when everything stopped. There was no outburst, no argument, just a pause. A shift. A quiet, painful closing of a door. Hetfield, always guarded and emotionally disciplined, didn't respond. And that silence said everything. The project didn't die from egos clashing in public. It died from old, unresolved scar tissue, still tender decades later. Mustaine later said, simply and painfully, "Once I brought that up, it was over." He wasn't dramatic. He was resigned. Hurt, but mostly disappointed. He had extended a cautious hand. And for a brief moment, it looked like Hetfield might take it. But instead, their oldest wounds reopened. Fans were devastated. The idea of Hetfield and Mustaine reuniting on the very songs that defined their shared origin wasn't just a dream. It was a spiritual homecoming. A coda to one of metal's greatest tragedies. But instead, it became another what if on the growing list of missed chances between them. And yet, the fact that they even got that far mattered. Hetfield didn't shut it down immediately. He listened. That, in itself, was different. It marked a subtle shift from the decades of distance and silence. There was no final explosion, no bridge burned. Just that familiar aching silence, the one that has always existed between them. Later, when asked about the situation in a separate interview, Hetfield gave a measured, restrained reply: "I respect him. I respect what he's done. That's where we are right now." It wasn't a rebuttal, but it wasn't a reconciliation either. It was Hetfield being Hetfield, guarded, thoughtful, letting the music speak louder than words ever could. Ultimately, the failed project became a symbol of their entire relationship. Close, but complicated. Full of potential, but paralyzed by history. It proved that some wounds are too deep to heal fully, no matter how much time passes. Some legacies are layered with too much pride, too much pain. What could have been a moment of closure instead reopened every scar. And while Hetfield and Mustaine drifted apart once again, their fans were left to carry the emotional weight of the fracture that shaped the genre they loved. While Hetfield and Mustaine continued to wrestle with personal demons and the heavy silence of a broken brotherhood, their fans were waging a war of their own. Unlike the cold restraint shown by the two musicians, the fan war was loud, unapologetic, and tribal. Through the late 1980s and well into the 1990s, metal fans drew battle lines with unwavering passion. You were either with Metallica or with Megadeth. There was no in-between. Metallica had the mainstream visibility. Their sound was massive, their albums were everywhere, their shows filled stadiums. They were the giants who took metal out of the underground and into the global spotlight. When the Black Album dropped in 1991, it redefined heavy music for the world. Metallica reached heights no metal band had ever touched: chart dominance, radio play, and cross-genre appeal. For millions, Metallica was heavy metal. But to a huge segment of the metal community, that success came with a price. Enter Megadeth. While Metallica climbed charts and polished their production, Megadeth doubled down on technical ferocity and sonic complexity. Albums like Peace Sells. But who's buying? So Far, So Good. So What? And Rust in Peace weren't chasing radio-friendly formulas. They were crafted to push the boundaries of speed, precision, and compositional ambition. And for die-hard metalheads, this made all the difference. Megadeth was the band that didn't sell out. Dave Mustaine, their frontman, wasn't just a guitar wizard. He was a symbol of rebellion against commercialization. The result? Fans formed tribes. Some admired Metallica's growth, their bold experimentation, their larger-than-life performances. Others swore by Megadeth's purity, their refusal to dilute the essence of thrash. Both sides saw themselves as defenders of what metal should be. Their debates echoed on message boards, in magazine letters, and across school cafeterias around the world. The media, of course, feasted on the division. Rock journalists framed every Mustaine interview as a shot fired, every Hetfield quote as a counterpunch. Even silence was spun into subtext. Headlines like "The Metal Wars" and "Clash of the Titans" kept the rivalry burning. And to some extent, both bands benefited. The drama attracted attention. But over time, something changed. Fans began to see how the feud shaped their own identities. For some, loving Metallica meant embracing evolution. It meant recognizing the artistry in taking risks, from the haunting tones of "Nothing Else Matters" to the complex rhythms of "And Justice for All." For others, pledging loyalty to Megadeth meant choosing authenticity over accessibility, musicianship over mass appeal. Yet, beneath the battle lines, fans began to realize something deeper. Both bands were incredible. Their differences didn't have to mean one was lesser. In fact, those differences made the genre richer. You could respect Mustaine's pain-fueled creativity and admire Hetfield's discipline and growth. You could blast "Holy Wars" and "Fade to Black" in the same playlist. And more, that's exactly what began to happen. By the 2000s, as metal evolved and younger generations explored its roots, the old animosities began to soften. New fans didn't inherit the bitterness. They came with open ears, no need to pick sides. Online forums shifted from heated arguments to appreciation threads. Festivals like the Big Four, where Metallica and Megadeth finally shared the same stage, became symbols of unity rather than rivalry. Still, that tribal energy never fully disappeared. There's a pulse of nostalgia in those old debates, a thrill in asking who was really the better band. But now, it's more of a celebration than a conflict. Fans understand that the rivalry itself pushed both bands to be better. Hetfield and Mustaine didn't just challenge each other. They pushed us, the audience, to listen deeper, to care more, to invest in the music beyond the surface. Time has softened the war cries. But one question still haunts both camps. What if the past hadn't pulled them apart? The collaboration that still haunts them. Today, the rivalry between James Hetfield and Dave Mustaine feels less like a grudge and more like a legend, etched into the DNA of heavy metal. But unlike most feuds that fade with time, this one lingers, not just because of what it was, but because of what it could have been. For decades, fans have whispered a haunting, what if? What if Metallica never let Mustaine go? What if they had found a way to make it work? It's a question loaded with emotional weight. Because in just a short, chaotic window, Hetfield and Mustaine helped lay the very foundation of thrash metal. Their early collaborations were messy and unrefined, but there was a unique energy in that chaos, a creative friction that sparked a wildfire and changed rock history. Mustaine has never shied away from imagining those alternate realities. Over the years, he suggested reunions, floated ideas of collaborative albums. Some were fueled by nostalgia, others by ambition. But always, there was a lingering sense of unfinished business. Mustaine has even spoken publicly about trying to reconnect with Hetfield, especially as both men grew older, scarred by battles with addiction, illness, and personal loss. Hetfield, ever the guarded soul, has responded more cautiously. He's acknowledged what Mustaine brought to early Metallica. In rare moments, he's spoken with real sincerity, admitting respect and hinting at growth. Age, he said, had helped him see the past with more clarity. And yet, just when it seemed a breakthrough was possible, something always pulled them apart. One of the most heartbreaking near-misses came in 2023. In an interview with Guitar.com, Mustaine revealed that he and Hetfield had seriously discussed a collaboration. The idea, reworking some of their early Metallica material together, songs that still bore both their fingerprints. It could have been monumental. Not just a creative reunion, but a symbolic one. A moment of closure. A chance to end the story together as co-creators. But it wasn't to be. According to Mustaine, the moment the subject of publishing rights came up, his long-standing belief that he had never been properly credited, Hetfield shut down. No fight. No argument. Just silence. And with that silence, the spark was gone. "I was trying to be friendly," Mustaine later said. "But once I brought that up, it was over." It was a brutal reminder. Even now, even after all this time, the distance remains. The tragedy isn't just that the collaboration never happened. It's that they were finally talking, really talking, and history still got in the way. The past crept back in like a ghost, reopening wounds and unraveling years of slow healing. So what does it all mean now? Two bands. One broken bond. A legacy too powerful to ignore. Whether they ever play together again or never speak another word, their story is already written into the bones of heavy metal. It's a legend shaped by brilliance, brokenness, and the brutal beauty of what might have been. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want more untold stories from the world of music. And don't miss the next video.